Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Facebook Live Shoosmiths Live video. Today I'm joined by Karen Howard, who is a partner in our London office, and we are filming from the London office today. So good chance to get onto our Instagram later and have a look for some of our London office pictures that I'll be sharing. So today then we are going to be talking a little bit about your background, Karen, and also social mobility and how, what an important topic really that is in the legal industry. Well, in all industries, but particularly in the legal industry at the moment. And you can ask us questions at any point throughout this video. All you need to do is just type them into the comments and they'll come through to us and we will get to your questions. So we want this to be a really interactive, engaged session. So please do let us know your thoughts as we go through. So my name's Sam and I'm the Graduate Recruitment Manager for Shoosmiths. So I look after our trainee solicitor programme across our 13 UK offices. And yeah, so we've been running these sessions for a while now. We've got some fantastic topics. If you do want to go and look at any of our past or upcoming Shoosmiths Live events, then you just need to go onto our Facebook videos page, or you can also check these out on our YouTube channel, which is Shoosmiths Video. Okay, so let's get started. So I mentioned that we're in our London office today filming, so I want to know where you are watching us from. So if you just type into the comments the city or town or village that you're watching us from, that would be great. And if there's a friend or a colleague that you think could benefit from watching this video, then tag them in the comments as well. Okay, so let's just get straight into the interview. Okay. So Karen, do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, right. I'm from the East End of London. I work in the city now, but when I was young and growing up, I went to a comprehensive school, which is an academy now and doing exceptionally well, but it wasn't like that when I was at school. So I'm now 55, so there's been a long time that I've been in the career, and I come from a family that were in car braking, scrap metal, lots of fun with cars and stuff, but I went to school thinking really that I would just replicate what they were doing, and then decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something with a career. And I think it shocked my family at the time because they were just saying, well, you'll go into family business. And I said, no, I don't want to. So that's a little bit about me. Live in Chelmsford now and I have a daughter of 23.
Okay, perfect. So tell us then, at a young age, you think that you thought the car braking industry wasn't for you. You didn't want to continue with the family business. What was it that drew you to law? Was that straight away you thought you wanted to go into law, or did you investigate a few things first?
No, it's really interesting because at the time when I was coming through doing my A-levels, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I worked as a training manager at Sainsbury's and lots of my friends were doing different things. And I just didn't know. I thought about things but didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it was sort of by accident because my brother went to the Falklands and he was in the Navy and fought in the Falklands War. And at the time I was doing my A-levels, struggling, not sure I was going to get through them. And the only university that actually accepted me for a place was in law. So that's really how it happened. So I didn't have I want to be a lawyer, my burning ambition, that's what I'm going to do. It sort of happened by accident, but once I started the studying, I thought I really like this. So that's really where it all kicked off, I suppose. And my family joked with me and said, oh, we need a lawyer in the family. But none of them really had a career, so they didn't really know, they couldn't really advise me. And when I got into the city, of course, it was just a real wide open space and I didn't really know my place, if that makes sense, because of coming from a family that had never been academic, and launching myself into the city was a bit of a shock.
Yeah,
really.
So you were the first in your family to go to university?
Yeah, the first, and in fact my mum and dad left school at 15, no qualifications whatsoever, and I always think I do credit them because they made me really confident, but they couldn't help me with studying or anything. So it was a real sort of difficult time, but I had support in that they just said, yeah, you know, if you want to do that, then we'll encourage you to do that, but we can't really help you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And tell us what happened then. So you went to uni to study law, and which uni did you go to?
So I went to, at the time it was called Chelmer Institute of Higher Education, it's now Essex University. And I have to confess I dropped out after a year. So mainly because I suppose everyone else had this fixed idea about how they were going to get into the law, and I just didn't know the system. So I dropped out and I was doing training management at Sainsbury's, and then an opportunity came up at the local council to work in the legal department. So I was in a situation where I was drawn to it, came away from it and came back into it. So it just proves to you that if you get a taste of something, then if you keep going, I think that really does open up opportunities. I think that's the key thing that I would say I've done.
And certainly we hear more and more that an expectation is that people go to uni, they do a degree, then they go to do the postgrad, and then they get their traineeship and go on from there. But of course, careers just aren't like that, and more we hear about on our videos that it's just not like that. It's a lot more like this.
Lots of sort of bumps in the road, lots of times where you question what you want to do. People seem to have more information than you do, and the one thing I would say is that you never assume anything. You've got to just keep going, asking questions, making sure that you're happy in what you're doing. So I had a friend of mine who's now a criminal lawyer, and I remember saying to him, how do you do that? And he was saying, well, it's just something I've always known, and he was really certain. And I wasn't, and yet he said to me only last week, you've done so well. And I don't see it as doing well. I just think what you do is you make a choice, and you make a choice to stick to something, and very often you've just got to keep going. So that's what I did.
So then you, so sort of skipping forward a bit, you joined Shoosmiths as a partner in, I think, April 2019.
Yeah.
So tell us about your role here at Shoosmiths.
So I'm a partner in the planning department, so it's a national department. So we've got lots of people at different levels, partners, legal assistants, all sorts of people there. And I have to manage the southern offices and help Lisa and Catherine, who run the national team. So my day is never the same from one day to another. I will be looking at business development, I'll be looking at cases, clients. So I do a mixture of strategic housing, I do a mixture of retail development, compulsory purchase. So effectively you're just running lots of different transactions all the time and making sure that you're effectively helping clients get to where they want to be.
Yeah. How much of your role would you say is more about being a business advisor, and how much do you think is about being a legal advisor?
I would say the split now is probably 60-40. So I'd say it's the business really, because you have to learn how to get clients in, how to make sure that their interests are represented, and then the legal side of it is more to do with what comes across your desk. So you are your client's friend, so you have to make sure that their interests are aligned with what you're trying to achieve for them. So it's not always straightforward. It's not just let's get the textbooks out, let's look at what it says. What you're doing is you're making sure that anything that they're trying to achieve, they can achieve, but obviously within the law. So it's interesting, because a lot of people say, I'd love to be a lawyer because you've got all the books out and that's what you do, and you say no, that's not really what we do. We do a lot more than that. So we look at costings, we look at project management, we look at the client's business. Is it a good thing for this person to pursue this? Is it a bad thing? And you really are a trusted advisor. So it's a lot different to what people expect.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great, but it's a lot different.
Do you think that there's the balance shift? So do you think as a more junior legal advisor, you're doing more of the legal advice, and then as you become more senior in your role and take on more experience, then you do more of the business side?
Yeah, so you look at things more strategically when you're older. And but everyone has steps. So you start off at a level where you are training, and what you're doing is you are looking at cases, learning the law, because it is important still to be a lawyer, and then you apply it. So as you get older, there are certain things that you can say, well, I don't need to do that anymore because I know what the steps are. So it becomes quicker. And you then also get more confident. You get more confident about advising people, and sometimes you simply have to say no. I know that sounds daft, but you'll say to someone, well, actually, if you did that, then that's not going to work out for you. I would recommend that you do this. And that's not necessarily a legal step, but confidence grows, and as you get older, your confidence just makes sure that you're doing something really good, and you achieve a lot more out of it. But at a junior level, of course, you can't make those big decisions until you know what the steps are.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you. That's really useful. Okay, so in a recent article by the Law Gazette, which was all about your kind of legal life, one of the things that you said was, having my daughter Kate in 96 and sitting my exams the year after her birth certainly stands out as a highlight, even though many people said I didn't have the time to be a mother and qualify as a solicitor. I've also walked 6 marathons, including the well-known London Moonwalk to raise money for cancer, and skydived for another charity in memory of a client's son. So I really enjoyed reading that about you, and I think that's a really good positive reinforcement that a work-life balance is possible, and you can have a bit of everything if you want, notwithstanding that it takes hard work.
Yeah.
But how can you expand on how you actually found that in reality, juggling lots of different areas of your life at once?
I think you do have to juggle. There are times that you won't do it well. There are times that you have to stop being hard on yourself. So certainly with Kate at age, well, she went into nursery when she was 3 months old, and that's not for everyone, and I absolutely accept that. But I was the one that was earning the money in the house and paying the mortgage, so I just took it as a step that I had to do. There were times that I came home and worked until 2 or 3 in the morning when she was in bed, but then there are other times that you have to sort of take back for yourself. So you just make sure that you keep a check on your own mental health and your well-being. That's the thing that I would say. And I remember a friend of mine saying, you don't have to prove anything anymore. And I was saying, no, I've got to keep going, I've got to keep going. She was saying, just, take some time out. So I think that you learn that no one is perfect. Everything's a balancing act. And if you talk to one another, you get a lot more out of it, understanding, like you've got a child as well, and I think you can share those experiences. And ultimately, if you're in a legal firm, you should be able to do that and juggle, and you should be able to say to someone, look, I can't stay tonight because I've got football practice or something that I've got to see. So I think you have to sort of make sure that you're keeping a balance is what I would say. But you also have to make a decision quite early on what you want out of it, because there are some people that choose to have a family, and that's fine, and they don't want to be doing the legal thing forever. It's up to the individual really, and I just chose to stick with it and do what I do.
I think for me, definitely finding a business that empowers you to make your own decisions for what works for you, and then the support that you need is there if you need it. So whatever, if you chose not to return, if you choose to come back on a part-time basis or full-time, the support is going to be there, whatever. And I think that's part of certainly our culture that I found at Shoosmiths. Is that something that you found quite easily through your role, because Kate's now 23, you've got 20 extra years on motherhood than I have.
But I think you have to also ask for help. There are times that friends of mine have said to me, it looks so easy. And I say, no, it isn't easy. The environment is important. Shoosmiths is a good culture for that. And not every law firm has the same culture. And I think you have to recognise that, so you make that choice. So I think it's very important to say, I need help, or I need some assistance doing this. I just need to have certain things. And I think genuinely most people want to help you. It's my experience, and I think Shoosmiths has a really good culture from that perspective, that you sit in a room together and you will find out that people have the same battles that you have as a mum or a dad, so everybody can actually benefit if you support one another. So I was talking to someone who's going on maternity leave this morning, and I said to her, keep in touch, but equally don't feel you have to keep in touch. When you're ready. And I think that's important, really.
That somebody knows that you're there when they're ready to reach out. And absolutely. Okay, so just a reminder that you can ask us questions at any time. Just type them into the comments, and we will answer your questions for you. I've got a few more questions that I want to ask Karen first. So we're going to talk a bit more about social mobility now, and for anybody that's watching that doesn't really understand what that term sort of means and covers, can you give us a bit of, well, your personal opinion about what social mobility is?
I think social mobility is a sort of all-encompassing term, really, that doesn't always explain itself by just the term social mobility. But I think what it means is making sure that your background or where you've come from doesn't define you. So that could be that you come from a particular culture that likes doing things a certain way, or you come from a background where there's absolutely no money, or it's like an elevation that is your own internal elevation. So that's why social mobility means different things to different people. But I just saw it as my family were not educated, so therefore my social mobility meant that I wanted to be more educated and to live a different life. So I think it has a lot of different meanings, but at its simplest is not accepting necessarily that you have to stay on the level that you're born into or that you're experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And you tell us a little bit about your experience of social mobility. So you said that you came from kind of first in your family to go to university, and you moved into the city, and it was a big world. Like, how did you find all of that, and how did you cope?
It was interesting because I come from a really supportive, very paternal, and my dad was amazing with me, in terms of I could do anything really, I could do nothing wrong. And I didn't really know what the city was like, so when I came into the city, I found it quite intimidating and quite threatening. And the thing that I didn't understand was that people would say to me, one person in particular said, I think you ought to go for elocution lessons. And I thought, well, I don't know why. I've always spoken like this. Why do I need to speak any different? And then I went to about 3 or 4 lessons, and another partner came to me at the time and said, don't you dare. So it's interesting. I thought it was quite intimidating, but I thought that I had to do certain things to be accepted. And then I realised I didn't have to.
Yeah.
But I do think that's tricky to try and negotiate that, because you feel out of place.
Yeah.
So social mobility may define you to a point where you don't feel you belong, but you've got to convince yourself you do.
Yeah. Or
or do things that actually make you feel better. So that's what I found anyway. And I did find that there was a lot of I went to university, I went to Oxford, I did this, I did that, but I met some really good people along the way that it didn't matter where they'd been to, or whether they were really wealthy, and you realise that there's good and bad, really, and you've just got to keep going.
Okay. And then tell us a little bit about, it's a hot topic in the industry at the moment.
It is, yeah.
I don't know if anybody's been watching The Split. Have you managed to catch up on that?
Okay.
No,
I'd like to.
So the first series has already happened. We're on to the second series now, and there was a scene where a junior barrister or a pupil is, and she's... I think she's first to go to uni, right, black and female, and so she makes a point of saying that she's like one of the lowest percentage of barristers, and I just think it's still very rife in the law. It's something that does need addressing, but it's such a hot topic that people are much better at addressing it now, much better at recognising that social mobility is really important. And essentially, I guess it's saying that everybody starts with the same capability, but just that some people don't necessarily have the opportunities that other people do. So if you come from a family who's been educated, work in the law themselves, then there's going to be more opportunities for the child coming up and learning from their parents. And then in your case, where you didn't have that, you have to take it on yourself and find other ways to get around it, I guess.
I think that's true. And I also think that it's really important for me as a partner and everyone around me to make sure that people have opportunities. So I wouldn't ever say to someone, oh, of course you wouldn't know that because you weren't from a particular place. I don't think that's right. But I also think it's right that it is a hot topic. And I do think each law firm or barrister chambers, I think they have to just keep going, because I don't think we're there yet. I really don't. I think we are 5 or 10 years away from proper improvement being made. And I had a friend called Marcia who I met when I was at Berwyn-Leighton, and I think she was the first black student to go to Oxford. And one day we were sitting in the office, and a young girl came in, and who was white, and she said, I went to Oxford actually. And I remember turning to Marcia and saying, didn't you go to Oxford actually? Because I didn't want her to feel that, you know, she had if you like, a more important position by the fact that she'd done that, and I wanted her to see that other people have done the same, you know, and it shouldn't be assumed that someone, because they come from a particular place, it actually frustrates me at times. So I try and sort of just work within that, but I do think, as I say, Shoosmiths is a good place for that, because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And I think that's what we've got to get beyond that, whether something matters or not.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we're working towards is working towards removing our grades entirely from our application forms, and we're not there yet, but it's something that I've talked about previously.
Nice,
but we don't ask for any schools at all on our application form, so we don't know any of that detail. And we do ask for a university, but we don't score against a university.
Right,
so I think a lot of people always ask us, you know, will I get a higher score because I went to, say, Oxbridge, or not? And no, that's not the case. We're not looking at a particular uni and judging you on that. And for us, it was really important when we were able to lower our minimum requirements in terms of the academics, because it meant that it opened up our applications to a broader range of people who may have struggled, say, at A-levels, but that can be many, many years ago, and we didn't just want to judge it on that alone.
But they also have different abilities. So just because someone is academic doesn't necessarily mean that they've got what I call resilience. So I wouldn't necessarily just look at academic qualifications and say that defines a person, because it really doesn't. And, you know, so I've met some exceptional people that on paper, through their qualifications, someone may have rejected them a while ago, but they're superb. So I think academic qualifications are just one small part of everything.
And that's why we look at the application as a whole. So we look at academics as a small part, and then work experience as a small part, and we add up all the small parts that we look at and look at that overall score together. And we think that's the most holistic way of looking at the person at application stage. But yeah, absolutely agree that I think academics doesn't necessarily denote all the other skills that you need to be a solicitor, and emotional intelligence and all of the rest of it. So
I agree.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what actually Shoosmiths is doing to support social mobility.
So we do quite a lot, really. I mean, we have a lot of knowledge sharing, but we also make sure that we're inviting people to share experiences. And we also are doing some work within schools and areas, so that we are volunteering and making sure that people have access to people in the industry, I suppose, to be able to ask questions and to reassure people. So, and I think there's some work with, is it Justine Greening, MP, and you know, there are a lot of people out there who would be helping in this environment as well. So there's quite a lot that we're doing. You could probably, you're the one that does all this, so you could probably tell more that I don't even know, because I've not been here that long, but I know that there's a real good feeling, good movement around the whole thing here, really, of social mobility.
Definitely something that our diversity, wellbeing and inclusion team are working heavily on at the moment, and I know they've been leading a lot of the work with CEO Simon Boss with Justine Greening to find out what initiatives we can work on to improve social mobility in the industry. And I think exactly like you said, going into schools, particularly in kind of social mobility cold spots, and being able to raise aspirations and just
enable, you just plant a seed as well. Empower people, because I did some work in an area with 14-year-old boys, and you know, they were sort of finding that they didn't have anywhere to go, and there was a gang culture around where they were. And I think just talking to them and allowing them to see that there are other things in life, and as they get older, they don't all have to be lawyers, but giving them choices, or talking to them about what they like, and whether that is engineer, it could be anything. Sowing that seed, I think, is really important, so that they feel that they've got something that they can do with their life and their skills, because they'll have a different set of skills to what you or I would have.
I think there's quite a number of charities. I definitely know of one in Birmingham that's all to do with providing people with suits and the right dress wear to attend an interview, for an example, because again, that might be a small thing that people don't think about, but somebody who's coming from a background with little money perhaps might not have the money to actually go out and spend on a new suit to wear to an interview. They might need to be providing for their family, or paying for food, so they have to judge which is the priority there, and then that's putting somebody potentially on a back foot. So I think charities that are enabling people to go and get the kind of careers.
We certainly did a lot of that. We collected, and I think it's really important, we collected suits that people no longer wanted, or collected money so that people could have something, because I think that just giving them that little bit of confidence, or telling them how to answer a question, just makes such a difference. And reassurance, because they may have never been in an environment where they could actually be able to speak up for themselves. It all counts, really.
Okay, so just a reminder, you can ask your questions. I can see that a few have come through, so thank you very much. I'm going to get to your questions just in a second. But I wanted to ask you, Karen, what was your biggest hurdle that you faced in reaching partnerships? And have you ever wanted to give up? So I think we kind of touched on this a little bit. But...
I think the biggest hurdle was that I was working at the same time as studying. So when I went into Berwyn Leighton, I was in the city, we used to do lots of public inquiries, so I was away a lot and I was working really long hours, but I wanted to qualify as a solicitor. So I remember going to my boss, who was a really good boss, and I said, I need to have this time off. And he said, you can't possibly have the time off. What's wrong with you just carrying on doing what you do? You do a good job. And I remember saying, but I want to be a partner. And, and going away from his office, saying to myself, no, this is actually stopping me from being what I want to be. So I then made sure that I went to evening classes. I made sure that I put the studying in and used really every spare hour that I could to ensure that I could carry on, because there will be blockages along the way, whether it's people, whether it's circumstance, whether it's money, but I think that there is also a way that you can do what you want to do if you really set your mind to it. And people will help you as well.
Okay. Do you still face social mobility challenges, do you think?
Definitely. Definitely. I think the interesting thing for me is it's got better as I've got older, but certainly I think people, because I'm slightly different, I think people naturally assume that I'm not necessarily the same calibre of lawyer who might be speaking with a different accent. That sounds odd, but I do experience it. And then once they know I can do what I do, the barriers come down, but it's definitely there. It is interesting. And I think it's there wherever you are. Even going in to buy a new car the other day, and I was in my gym wear, and I could see the lady at the desk look at me as if to say, you probably can't afford a new car. I think it's everywhere. You've just got to keep going and just ignore it, really. Because otherwise you'll end up missing out on life.
It's definitely something that Chris White from Aspiring Solicitors has spoken about before, about his own accent and feeling like that held him back, and him feeling the same way, like he needed elocution lessons early on until he, I guess, accepted himself, and then just...
I think it's really important to be authentic. So I think that you can speak differently, you can try different things. If it works for you and you're happy with that, that's fine. But I felt that it was changing myself as a personality, or me as a personality, and I certainly wouldn't ever look at anyone differently. So, and I think there are a lot more people out there like me. So I think that that's the thing you have to keep in mind. Not everyone is judging you, although some people will.
So there was an article out recently, I know Legal Cheek reported on it and maybe a couple of other publications did, and it was about, I think, a barrister who, he said the opposite. So he said that, I think he was talking about himself, he felt that he did need to change his accent to fit in, and he did.
I think you can, and I think that if you are a barrister and you're appearing in court, it might mean more to you to do that. So there's nothing wrong with the way that he chose to do things, but I think that's up to the individual.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say go off and get elocution lessons or go off and change your, the way that you speak. Obviously there are certain things that you can't do. So I would never, for example, curse or anything in a particular environment, because I just think you get less accepted because people won't take you seriously. So I think you have to probably modify your behaviour, but I don't necessarily think you have to speak, with a plum in your mouth, as they used to say, because that will drop anyway. So if you can do it and stick with it and it suits you, fine. But it wasn't for me.
So I guess just shows what a personal subject social mobility is to each individual, and it really has to come back to yourself and how you feel. Okay, so I'm going to move on to asking some of the questions that have come in. So let's see. We've got some people watching us from Luton, Edinburgh, London, Gatwick, all over the place. So that's fantastic. Thank you guys for commenting. So Amarul has asked, how do Shoosmiths help individuals to deal with social barriers and the feeling of imposter syndrome?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a difficult one to answer because I don't think anyone actually says how they're feeling in terms of an imposter syndrome. So because I think that that's something that it's an individual thing where you feel you're not good enough. So I think that we've got a lot of wellbeing programs and things that you can actually talk about your feelings or talk about how you're feeling, and actually talk about that in a confidential environment where you say, well, I never feel I'm good enough. And people will say, well, try and explain that. So it's not an everyday thing, but what I would say is that certainly here people have a voice. So I do feel that you can choose, someone in the office and say, well, I'm not having a very good day today. And I think everyone always makes time here. So it just depends. But as to programs to deal with that, there wouldn't be that. It'd just be lots of support, lots of mental health, support, wellbeing support, people you can talk to. So we have lots of, even helplines, don't we? That you can actually ring yourself and talk to people about how you're feeling. So I think certainly that information is there and it's publicised. So I suppose that's an answer to the question, really.
I think it's quite common for trainees joining us to feel like somebody might find them out at some point and they shouldn't be here. And actually I've spoken to partners who felt the same way when they first joined, started their training. So I think for any role it's probably pretty common. But I think it comes a little bit with confidence in yourself and like you say, all the support networks.
Don't get me wrong, there are days when I think to myself, why am I a lawyer? but you then it passes. So what you shouldn't do if you're watching TV or anything is assume anything from anyone. And as you know from a lot of publicity that's out there on the streets, and out sort of in the open when there's lots of mental health crises, is that you don't really know what people are thinking day to day. I don't think anyone can assume. So I think the important thing is to keep talking, because that way you get to know a bit more and not to judge ultimately.
Perfect. Thank you, Amarul, for that question. Okay, so Kate Fisher, she's asked, with an ageing workforce and no discrimination on age in recruitment, in your opinion, Karen, do you envisage value coming from employing new entrants to law in their 40s and 50s? So what she's asking is, do you think there's an advantage to employing career changers or mature candidates?
I think there's always an advantage in employing across all ages. I don't think you can assume that because someone's 40 or 50 they're over the hill, and I'm putting myself into this category really. I think everyone has experiences, and I also think it's a bit like the Dragon's Den thing. You know, people can come up with new things, innovation, or a way that they've done something in another industry, or even just you know, at home when they've been working, they've been inspired, not working, sorry, at home, you know, mums, and they want to go back to work, they might have been inspired by something. I don't think that anyone should be discriminated against, regardless.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And I do think that I would encourage people to come in at 50, sometimes 60, 70, if they've got the, you know, if they want to do it, then everything they've got is an experience to share.
And we're going to be working longer, so why not change later? I think it's only a benefit because the additional experience and difference in knowledge and experience that you can bring into a law firm, you'll have a different set of skills and things to bring. That I just think it's a great benefit and a different angle of viewing things. So.
I also think the you know, looking at diversity across the whole, it's really important to get people's perspectives. So it doesn't matter what age they are or anything, their background, their culture or anything. I think different perspectives and being able to talk about things, you know, in an environment where everybody feels they've got something to contribute is ultimately a good sign of a good law firm.
Yeah.
And we had a meeting this morning where various people were in the room, and it's great just sitting, listening to different points of view. You don't necessarily agree with all of them, but it's good to do that.
Yeah.
So.
And broadens your horizons for things, doesn't it, as well,
Yeah.
and your opinions. And I talked recently in a video about broadening or developing your personality so you can sell yourself better at an interview. And one of the things I talked about was reading books, and it's the same kind of thing, listening to different opinions just to get a wider picture on things.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you, Kate, for that question. A question from Vera. Regarding real estate practice, how does Shoosmiths distinguish itself from city law firms like Berwin, Leighton, Paisner and stay competitive?
That's interesting. I think that the way that we stay competitive is that we are not necessarily made up just of people that have got Shoosmiths branded through them. So a lot of our workforce have come from places like that. So we're not just a Shoosmiths, you know, homegrown brand of people. So I think we're competitive in that we have people with the same knowledge and skills and abilities. You know, so I don't, if I see anyone across the room that is one of my former colleagues from Berwin Leighton, I don't think, oh, I'm going to run and hide. I think, well, actually, yeah, I'm as good as them. So I think that we stay competitive by being really true to our clients, and we stay competitive by actually responding to them rather than being the best lawyer in the universe.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you, Vera. So another question from Andrew. He said, thanks for giving your time to do this. Could you say a little bit more about resilience that you look for in applicants? And actually, Karen, you were an assessor on our assessment days that we held last summer. So you've definitely got a bit of an insight into how we run things in terms of recruitment at Shoosmiths and what we were looking for on the day. So yeah, how do you look for resilience?
It's interesting. I think you look for resilience by seeing how people handle situations. So one of the things that I really enjoyed on the assessment was that we had various candidates in a room and they have to talk about a particular subject and how they would approach something. And it's interesting because you are watching for people who, some are listeners, some are talkers, some are trying to control the situation, and what you're generally looking for is an even hand to how they approach things. So resilience is at various levels, I would say. So if someone maybe is a bit argumentative, it's making sure you've got the resilience just to keep walking through that, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who is probably underneath really stressed, but at the same time able to not show that too much. And I think to a trained eye, we would know that they might be stressed, but we would watch what they're saying and how they do things, and whether they, you know, in the long term, whether this career would be a good career. Because there are days when the situation is very stressful indeed, and the important thing is to make sure that you're not so stressed that you can't cope.
Yeah.
And there will be days like that. And there will be days, and one of my things that I've always said to the assistants around me is, yeah, okay, that wasn't great, but you know what, nobody died. And I think that, you know, that's my test for getting through things.
Yeah.
You know, what's the worst that can happen, and we can fix this. And I think you've got to keep that with you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for that question. Let's see, we've got a few more, I think, on here. Okay, so Kate, Kate Fisher, she said, listening to this makes me think of scholarships into fee-paying schools. It is just part of what's needed because getting into school is only one hurdle. As these kids need to exist and need support once at the school. Therefore, getting people into law roles from backgrounds that don't automatically see themselves going into law is one thing, but those people need ongoing support. So that's true, and we've spoken about the kind of ongoing support that there's then available. And I think part of what our commitment in the recruitment team is in doing these videos, and also our careers blog, is providing real, genuine accounts of people's experiences and being able to share that in a way that's really accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So one of the main reasons we started these videos was because we a small team of two, we simply can't get to every university campus and school and college that we want to in the UK that's even near our offices, let alone, you know, further out. So we thought that these videos would have a greater reach and a great way for people to just access that information. So, but also as ongoing support, because we're sharing accounts of people obviously doing the role. Yeah.
But I think that's it, and I think that when we have our insight evenings or anything, and if we're talking to people about, you know, the stages in their career or whether they're going to be able to get into any profession, there are various stages. I was talking to one of our paralegals the other day, and she wants to become a trainee, and I said, well, I'll help you, you know, and I think that's the other thing, that, you know, just because, and it's terrible really that people assume you get to a certain level in a law firm and you're no longer approachable, which is not true. But I think it's a duty on us as well to make sure that we continue to support people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not just lawyers, that's everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's, to me, that's important. We all make up the same firm.
Yeah.
You know, no matter if we're in support service, business service, accounts, really important that we carry on supporting.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody that plays a part in this firm contributes to its success and whatever level, So Maria, she said, thank you for the session. It's really inspiring to hear from someone who is used to working and studying at the same time. I'm currently working as a paralegal and doing my LPC, and I do feel it's hard to balance. Yeah, we've heard that, Maria. So good luck to you with your studies and working. So I think that's most of the questions that have come in. And Karen, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask me at all?
No, I think not sort of off my head. I suppose what I would say is that people ought to be able to get in contact with us and ask questions. You know, doesn't matter if they're watching this or whether they're just thinking of going into a career in law. And I think you and your team are always really accessible, you know, Amy. And I don't think people should feel that they can't approach you and ask questions about their future and their careers.
Yeah, well, I really hope people do think we're approachable. We definitely are. And just great point for me to throw out the email address, but if you did want to email us about anything, then you can contact me and Amy on joinus@shoosmiths.co.uk. But as I'm sure you're aware, we're all over Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and everything as well, so any of those platforms is great to contact us on. Today, actually on Instagram, so that's at Shoosmiths Grads, we're just running a small kind of Instagram quiz poll where we're posing you some questions about how you can get to know yourself a bit better. And this is a big theme that we're doing at a lot of our Insight Evening events at the moment, because we don't really think that you can start truly applying yourself to an application process until you truly know yourself. So go and have a look on there and just go through and answer some of the questions. And don't worry, we're not judging your answers at all. It's just a thinking point for you. Karen, anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think that's
perfect. I think we've covered
I
loads
really
of stuff.
enjoyed it actually.
Thank you so much for
intimidating,
coming
but
on.
I've enjoyed it.
You've been perfect. If you agree that Karen has been perfect, then just hit the thumbs up or the love heart for me, and that just indicates to us as well that we can get Karen back on again. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
and
everyone.
we'll see you next month for our next Facebook Live.